A federal election is coming, and undoubtedly there are a lot of issues that Christians are going to be interested in because the policies of the major parties are so often now in contrast to biblical Christian ethical positions. The policies of the major parties are very fluid and are prone to change according to really just the winds of public opinion. For some, this is normal and acceptable, but for the biblical Christian, there are some unchanging truths that should be defended, like the value of human life and biblical foundations around sex and gender. But now there's a very big development where parties are instructing candidates not to attend faith-based Meet the Candidate forums. Natalie Davis is joining us. She's a candidate for One Nation in the Queensland seat of Wright. Natalie, a special welcome along to 2020.
Thank you so much, Neil. Thank you for having me today.
It's become a thing, Natalie, where churches and where Christian Meet the Candidate forums have become something that's just standard on the calendar for an election campaign. Is this looking like it could be something in the past?
Yeah, you could be right. It was really interesting. During the Queensland election, I had the privilege of being able to moderate a candidate forum at my local church, Harvest Point Church in Beaudesert. And during that forum, as it was, we had the Greens member and the Labor member simply not turn up. But the remaining candidates were there. We asked a series of questions. In fact, it was very interesting, Neil, because the proviso for the sitting member to come was that we would provide all of the questions in advance. He wasn't going to turn up if we didn't provide that. So I said to my pastor, that's okay, we can do that. We'll put together a list of questions. It just means that the other candidates also have a chance to review those questions according to their party's platforms and be able to respond. It would mean they couldn't give you that answer. I'll have to look into that and get back to you. So we got a team together, put those questions together, sent them out to the candidates and had our candidate forum. Now, one of the questions, and it was the first question in our list, was on abortion. And we put that to the member, and it was very interesting because the member in his response indicated that he is very, very much pro-life. Would it be okay to share that?
So the question was around the gag order that's been placed on LNP members with the new LNP government in Queensland.
Well, not quite. This is actually what has preceded that. So what happened was, this was the candidate, this was John Krause's response to the question of whether he would support repealing the Termination of Pregnancy Act and whether his party would also support it. And he said, I stand by my record 100% when it comes to matters of life and protecting life. We've had a couple of debates in Parliament about these things, and one of them was the Termination of Pregnancy Bill and also the Euthanasia Bill. And there's been other debates about regulation concerning abortion as well. And as Louise, who was one of the other candidates, pointed out, I voted against the Termination of Pregnancy Bill because I believe in the protection of life being the first principle of legislation. And that bill certainly watered that down a long way. I also want to talk about our leader's record, David Crucifulli. He, as a leader, has also been a firm believer and has voted against the abortion bill and against the euthanasia bill. John Krause continued to say, in 2018, all bar 3 on our team voted against it. And we had a true conscious vote on that, which I think is very much unlike the ALP, where I believe there were other people who wanted to vote against it, but no one did because there was very strong pressure within their team to toe the line. Now, what's happened, John? This particular response caused a huge ripple effect across LNP headquarters. And immediately, I believe it was probably the following day, the order was put out, and I know that Senator Malcolm Roberts actually looked into this, and he was able to confirm that, yes, the order had gone out from LNP headquarters that as a result of that candidate forum that we did, and this question was a particular point of thorn for them, that no one, none of the LNP candidates were to attend any further faith-based candidate forum. Fast forward now to them forming government, and on the 10th of December, the very first act was to suspend the orders of the day and immediately put a motion forward to end any further discussion or debate on abortion, on that Termination of Pregnancy Act.
And it really does fly in the face of what we think of as the things that happen in a democracy, where you've got representatives who are representing their constituents, and when they take a pro-life view into the parliament, we don't expect that there's going to be a gag. And it's been something that there's been a lot of outspokenness about. Do you know, Natalie, if other states and territories around Australia are thinking of the same sort of gag, because abortion and pro-life issues are becoming so much to the fore now that there might be others who are wanting to put a gag on these opportunities to speak?
Yeah, so Peter Costello has already made it very clear that he will not be supporting it. So we already have the Liberal Party leader who has already come out and made it very clear that this is not an issue that the Liberal Party are going to discuss. So we already have a gag order in place on it.
Okay, gag orders, and this flows on to when you've got candidates or even sitting members who might be attending a faith-based Meet the Candidate forum, that they're now being told you should not attend those Christian functions. Yeah.
So I want to explain something that goes along with that. You speak about our democracy. So the word democracy, of course, means rule of the people. And our democracy is a representative democracy. People forget the first part of it. It is a representative democracy. And the way that we have rule by the people is by the public, that every person is represented by a person that they elect. So the way that you have your voice in our society is through your representatives, whether it's state or whether it's federal. Now, I'll just give you an example. The Katter Party in the state election were very firm in saying that if you vote for us, we will take up this issue of termination of pregnancy and we're going to deal with it. You know, we've got the Katter's Babies Born Alive bill, etc., which One Nation supports fully, by the way. Now, by shutting down that debate and saying, actually, for the entire 4 years of Parliament, we're not actually going to allow you to even present a bill or a debate. What you're actually in effect doing is you're saying to a portion of the Australian population, and in fact a far larger portion than what we realise, I think it's something like 78% of people are against the concept of abortion. Now, I'm not going to, don't quote me on those figures because I don't remember them off the top of my head, but it's quite a high figure. People don't, and even less like the idea of a baby that's born alive that's left to die. So what we're doing in effect is removing the voice and the ability for people to raise issues through our parliament. And that's what they did with these standard orders. So with these standing orders and the attempt to wipe out any discussion on a particular topic. Now, I understand that standing orders can be, you can take leave of standing orders for procedural motions. I am questioning, can it be taken for content? So that would be my question, is this even constitutional in a representative democracy?
Let's talk about constitution here, because while we all like to wave around the Constitution, not everybody knows what the Constitution says.
That's
and
right.
Sometimes it's open to debate, and that's where you get all sorts of different dimensions and sides that can divide people. But what's your thought here on whether it's constitutional to actually prohibit any debate in a parliament over a particular issue?
Yeah, so the other thing to realise, Neil, is that we have an Australian constitution, and that Australian constitution was brought into play when the states federated. So the federal government has a very limited and defined role with what it can do. And so you could say that the constitution is the rule book for the federal government. But in addition to that, every state also has its own constitution. And so that needs to be taken into consideration. The only time where the federal government constitution supersedes the state constitution is in matters where the states have actually specified that the federal government has responsibility over that matter. So there are two separate sides of this.
In fact, the states have even more power, you might say,
Correct,
than the federal government.
They actually do. They have a lot more power, Neil.
We learned all about that, didn't we, during COVID? Hey, come back to churches hosting faith-based Meet the Candidate forums. And if these sorts of prohibitions are in place for members to attend, what should we do about that, do you think? You're going to be a candidate for One Nation. Is there some sort of stance about what the churches ought to do to actually say, well, wait a minute, we want to meet all the candidates here, not just the ones who want to come. We want everyone there.
Yeah, I think every single party and every single candidate and certainly every single politician who is currently being paid via our tax money, they have an actual responsibility to attend when they are invited to that type of event. Obviously, politicians can't attend every single event, but during election time, it is imperative and just a part of their responsibility to turn up to these events. And I think we need to put far more pressure on our politicians and require a whole lot more of them. And those that don't, I actually think we should be saying, if you're not willing to turn up, you don't have my vote.
Yes, and if politicians are not wanting to face the people, and that means facing Christians who might be in a church at a Meet the Candidates event too, then yes, they don't deserve our vote. There's some challenging times ahead. Natalie Davis is a candidate for One Nation in the Queensland seat of Wright. You can connect with Natalie at onenation.org.au/Natalie-Davis. Natalie-Davis. I think we're going to hear some more from Natalie. But Natalie, appreciate you bringing this to our attention and the challenge that might be before churches who are wanting to be active in their community and they're interested in community values. Appreciate your insight today on 2020.
Thank you so much, Neil.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.